The Cold War was between the US and the Soviet Union. A Cold War is a war not done with weapons but with money. Post-World War II, the US and Soviet Union competed against one another to advance their technology faster than the other, as well as spread either democracy or communism throughout the globe. As the Cold War began, Winston Churchill declared that an iron curtain had fallen between Europe, separating the East and the West. Berlin, a city in Germany, had been divided into the East and the West, although Berlin was on the Soviet Union's side of the curtain. The West, which had represented capitalism, had become far more prosperous than the East, which represented communism. This Cold War raged on for 4 decades. Stepping into office in 1981, President Ronald Reagan had promised to put an end to the Cold War. President Ronald Reagan was known as the Great Communicator. He was known for his one-liners. One time, weeks after someone attempted to assassinate him, a balloon popped at one of his speeches. He replied, "Miss me."
This city, America, missed me.
Now, back to Berlin. The Soviet Union had constructed a wall to separate East and the West. This wall prevented anyone from the communist East to see how prosperous the West was becoming. Many people attempted to flee, and many families were separated by this wall. The Soviet Union received huge backlash, and eventually, President Ronald Reagan said this:
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Although this wasn't an exact end of the Cold War, it was a step in the right direction, which eventually led to the Soviet Union collapsing and thus the Cold War ending. The Soviet Union had collapsed for a numerous amount of reasons. Economic inefficiency, ethnic tensions, and President Gorbachev's reforms and changes to the government were 3 major reasons for why the Soviet Union collapsed. On December 26, 1991, the Cold War had finally ended. President George H.W. Bush had agreed to end the Cold War. He had finished what Reagan started. The Cold War had a major effect on the U.S. both socially and economically. Socially, the intensive indoctrination of the American people led to aggression of social reforms. Economically, enormous growth spurred by industries related to war was aided by heavy government expansion. It's important to know about the Cold War because the Cold War shaped American foreign policy and political ideology, as well as it impacted the domestic economy and presidency, and affected the personal lives of Americans, creating a climate of expected conformity and normalcy.